Guys, welcome back. So about 6 months ago, I filmed my beauty room tour video and my makeup collection, and a lot of people wanted me to elaborate on my eye palette collection because I have a lot of them. I have 25 eye palettes. Some of them come pre-made, some of them I've put together in Z palettes myself, so that's what I'm going to show you today. The first palette I'm going to show you is the very first high-end eye palette I ever bought, Naked 2, and I used the crap out of this. I used the crap out of this for, I don't know, probably like the first 6 months or so that I had it, and then I realized there were other options available and then I needed them, so I started buying them. But obviously this color, Booty Call, I really loved a lot. Anyway, this is a good palette, and I got mine probably like 3 years ago now, so I'm sure most of these shadows are like on the verge of expiring, but sometimes I will still break this out and use it every now and then. But yeah, it's a good palette. I just wish there were more matte shadows. Just like most palettes from Urban Decay, there's like one, sometimes two matte shadows and the rest are shimmery. That's like Urban Decay's downfall, is they need more mattes. But anyway, this is the first palette I ever bought that wasn't like Wet n Wild. Another palette I have is the Naked 3. I never owned the Naked one, and I'm kind of sorry about that. I mean, it's not too late, of course, but I don't know. In my mind, it's too late to go back and buy it. But I actually do like this Naked 3 palette. I think I like it even better than the Naked 2 palette, even though a lot of the shades are really similar. It's just some have more shimmer than others. There are 3 matte shades in this palette, so you have a bit more options as far as looks that you can do and intensities that you can do. This came out originally when the whole rose gold hype was kind of going on, and so this is the rose gold palette. But anyway, I like it. I also still reach for this one a lot. A palette that I got a bit more recently is the Kat Von D Shade and Light Eye Palette, and it's a nice palette, honestly. They're all matte shadows, and the one thing I don't like about this palette is how powdery the shadows are. It's very similar to Lorac shadows. When you put your brush in it, it instantly, like, powder just goes whoosh. And they're nice shadows, but still they are a little bit powdery. So this isn't my favorite palette, but I do still like it, and you can create a lot of different looks with it. You're supposed to kind of do it in, you know, quadrants of shadows, but you can do it however you want. You can pair whatever shadows you want together. So yeah, this is still a good palette. For people that like really neutral colors, I would definitely recommend it. A palette that I got and forget that I have all the time because it's not amazing at all is this Ugly Tarte palette. This looks like, I don't know, a clutch you would get at Walmart or something. The reason I got it is because it has 6 shadows and 2 blushes. I'm going to try to do this without blinding you. But I really like Tarte blushes. The eyeshadows are really nice. You're just kind of limited with what you can do with these eyeshadows. The shadows are really big, which is cool, and you get a decent amount of blush, but I forget about this palette all the time because, I mean, look at it. Another palette I have is the Lorac Pro palette, and this was pretty popular last year, a little over a year ago, and I have gotten a good amount of use out of this palette. Like I mentioned when I was talking about the Kat Von D palette, the shadows are pretty powdery, and so it's kind of hard to control them sometimes. So that's kind of why I like to steer away from the darker matte shadows, because they're very, very powdery, and they can just kind of go all over your face. But otherwise, the colors are really, really pretty. Lorac always has really unique eyeshadows. If I could go back in time and relive the moment I clicked purchase on this Revealed 2 palette from Coastal Scents, I would not buy this again. I've only swatched the eyeshadows in this. I have not, actually, you know what? I think I may have tried to wear a couple colors. This palette sucks. I remember thinking, oh, what a great deal, because I have a ton of Coastal Scents single eyeshadows and most of them are really, really good. So I was like, hey, I'll just get this palette for 50% off. And there's a lot of, you know, a lot of colors that I like in here. When I saw it, I was like, oh yeah, that color right there, that is me right there. But it's disappointing. There are maybe 4 or 5 shadows in here that I would actually try to wear. The mattes are just chalky and you get no pigmentation out of them. Most of the shimmers are just not good. I don't know. I regret this. Definitely regret it. A more recent palette that I got is the Carly Bible and BH Cosmetics palette, and it's a really pretty palette. I like it. All of these shadows are really good quality. All of the highlighters are really good quality, and I got this for like $12.50, and you can't beat that. So love this palette, and it's perfect for fall. This one is kind of dumb. I don't even know if I can count it, but this was a 500-point gift from Sephora. I mean, it is a palette. It has like a little mirror and everything, but it's just 4 eyeshadows from Urban Decay, and you know, you save up your little points and you get a 500-point gift. So the only one that I've actually, oh, I've used two shadows out of here, the pink one and the beige one. So yeah, I mean, I'm just throwing it in there because it's an eyeshadow palette. Okay, so the first high-end palette that I bought was the Urban Decay Naked 2, and the second high-end palette that I got is this one from Too Faced. This is the Natural Eye Palette, and they have actually, I think, reformulated their eyeshadows, so they're a lot better now. But this is cool because in the top it comes with like these little guides on how to use the shadows and pair them up and stuff. And it's a pretty good palette. It definitely could use more mattes, as most palettes could. This gold right here, okay, let's talk about this for a second. Honey Pot, the most perfect gold that has ever existed. Now, a palette that I actually picked up more recently is the Lorac Mega Pro 2 palette, and I talked about this in my haul video 2 videos ago. I picked this up from Ulta. The first Mega Pro palette I was not excited about. It just, you know, whatever. But this one I actually really wanted, and the color that drew me in the most was Tangerine, and I use it all the time. Obviously this is very dirty now. These palettes are kind of hard to keep clean, and I did use this during some special effects shenanigans last weekend on Halloween, so it definitely got a lot dirtier. But I love all these shadows. I've swatched every single shadow. They're all amazing. I feel like maybe they did improve their formulas a little bit because they're not nearly as powdery, especially the mattes. They're a lot more creamy. If you were thinking about getting this, then get it. Now, I actually only own one Morphe palette, and it is the Jaclyn Hill Favorites palette. And the reason I ended up getting this is normally when it comes to really inexpensive eyeshadows, I like to try a couple singles out before I will splurge on a whole palette. Not that this was a splurge, I think it was $28. But I have been to the Morphe store, and I think it was, I don't know, a year and a half ago or something like that. I picked up a ton of brushes and a bunch of their shadows. I liked the shadows, and so when this palette came out, that's why I ended up picking it up, because I had experience with the shadows and I knew that they were pretty good for the most part. But this is actually a pretty good palette. I have gotten a lot of use out of it. There are some colors I haven't used yet, like these 2 right here I haven't used, and this really pretty orange. I'm surprised I haven't used that yet. And this brown, but I think it's like almost identical to this brown. Anyway, I really do like this palette. If you've debated whether or not you should buy Morphe palettes, they're actually really good palettes, especially if you are doing any sort of special effects or if you are a freelance makeup artist. Pick up makeup palettes from Morphe because they're inexpensive and they're good quality. We are going to have an entire segment on this video dedicated to these Anastasia Beverly Hills palettes because I think I have picked up every limited edition palette she has except for one, and it was like the very first one, and it was sold out before I even knew that the brand existed. So let's get into it. I think I'm going to do these chronologically, like the order in which they came out. And the first one I got from her is the Lavish palette, and this is back when the quality was not that great, you know, and they're not a new company at all. They've been around for like 15 years, maybe even more than that, but they just recently, you know, started putting out these shadows. So this is not a high quality packaging at all, but the eyeshadows, even back then when this first came out, it blows my mind. And I've gotten a lot of use out of this palette. All of these eyeshadows are beautiful. The next palette that I got from Anastasia is the Catwalk palette. And I think the only thing I don't like about this palette is they didn't put the names of the shadows underneath them, which is kind of lame. So what I ended up doing is just writing them on a piece of paper, putting it on the back, and just taping it on there. Beautiful colors. So that's another palette that I actually forget that I have, but then when I remember and I use it, I love it. One of the palettes that was really super hyped up and it was worth the hype was the Amrezy palette. And this came out like a year and a half ago probably. I've gotten a ton of use out of this one. I've used it in multiple videos of mine. And I love all the colors in here. They're all really good colors. And yeah, love that palette. And another one that I got that came out shortly after the Amrezy palette was the Maya Mia palette. And this was a collab with Maya Mia. She is on YouTube, but she's from like somewhere in Africa. Anyway, she's gorgeous, incredibly talented makeup artist, and I love all of these colors. Some of the colors at this point started becoming repeats in the palettes, like the color Glisten, Caramel, Sienna, but that's totally okay. Vanilla was also a repeat from the Amrezy palette, but that's because they're really popular colors, they're really beautiful colors, and another great palette. That palette was a success. I don't know for sure what palette came out after the Maya Mia palette, but the next one that I got is the Artist palette, and this is the one that's like mostly bright colors. This one is actually still available, even though this came out probably 6 or more months ago. This is still available just because it's not as popular, because normal people aren't going to want to use the yellow and the orange and the green and the 2 different purples. You know, this isn't a palette for normal people. There's a reason they call it the Artist palette. It is for the artist. After the Artist palette, one that came out is the Shadow Couture palette, which is very, very beautiful. This is a more of a normal person, everyday person palette, and this is one that you can use for an everyday makeup look, like any normal person eye makeup look, not tons of greens and oranges and things like that. So beautiful colors. Pink Champagne. This is when they started including pink champagne in their palettes. That is my favorite color from Anastasia, is pink champagne. It's so perfect and beautiful. I did a look with this palette, of course. I think I've done a look with all of these palettes. Not the Catwalk palette. I have not done the Catwalk palette. But otherwise, yes, I've done a look with every single one of these other palettes. And the most recent one that I actually just got last week or the week before is the Self-Made palette. And this just came out a couple weeks ago. And you actually get more shadows in this one than you would. And I think it's only like $5 more. This is a good palette for everyday use. The only thing that I wish that it had was a color kind of like caramel, you know, or Morocco, which is a good warm crease color. The only matte shadow that is in here that you can use as a crease color is Hot Chocolate, and it's a pretty deep brown. So that's my only complaint about this one, but I can't really complain about it because I have 6 other palettes from her that have so many other shadows to choose from. So yeah, I mean, it's fine. It's a good palette if you want to go buy it. That is actually it for my pre-made palettes. I am now going to show you 7 palettes that I have where I put the shadows together myself. This is the first Z palette that I ever bought. This is a Makeup Geek Z palette, and I got this probably 2.5 years ago. All of these shadows are not 2.5 years old. This is my bridal palette, basically. This is mostly colors that brides want to use on their wedding day. There are lots of neutral colors, some good lid shimmer colors like Pink Champagne that I was just talking about, and then Amber from Anastasia. Both are amazing colors, good brow highlight colors. So this is the first Z palette that I ever bought, and even though it doesn't say Z palette or look like a Z palette, this is a Makeup Geek Z palette. Another Z palette I have is this little guy right here, and I should have just bought the bigger size, but I'm stupid. These are purples. These are all, like, most of my purple single eyeshadows, and just like this one right here, I have Anastasia, I have Coastal Scents, I have Makeup Geek, I have Morphe shadows. That's what comprises these 2 palettes pretty much. I like to keep all my purples in one spot because I have a lot of makeup clients that want purples on their eyes, and I like to be able to show them this palette. They'll say, oh, I want like a nice deep purple look. And I'm like, okay, well, what is deep to you? Because this right here might be a deep purple. And so if I could show them this palette and be like, tell me what purples you want, then it's just easier for a lot of them. And the next palette that I put together is actually this MAC palette. And I used to use this palette all the time in the beginning of my channel. If you watched me in the very beginning, then you know that this palette was kind of my go-to palette. Pretty much everything MAC was my go-to in the beginning, but I still love this palette. I still reach for it all the time. There are go-to colors like Brown Script and Rule, which is this orange right here. These are like some of my go-to classic colors. Shroom, obviously, is very well loved, and yeah, I love MAC shadows. And yeah, when I first bought my Anastasia Beverly Hills singles like a year ago, when you buy 8 shadows, they send them to you in this 8-well palette, but I took all my Anastasia shadows out and put in my bright reds and oranges that I have in singles. And I use some of these in special effects, like this red right here. I think this is called, what is it called? Neon Red, and it's from Coastal Scents. It's actually a really, really good shadow. I use it a lot when I'm doing special effects. So yeah, this is where I keep my bright oranges and reds, and I think these are all Coastal Scents shadows. All of these right here are. Of course, I've stuck my fingers in like 20 different shadows since I started filming this. Alright, moving on, another Z palette, and you guys probably, I don't think you guys have seen this palette for a long time. Anyway, most of these are Coastal Scents, MAC, and there are some Morphe shadows in here as well. So I don't reach for this palette as often. That's why I take all of the colors that I don't use that often and put them in this single palette right here. But I do like these colors. You know, this is the problem with having so much makeup, is you forget that you have stuff, or you forget how much you like stuff, and then it just sits there unused. But I really like a lot of these colors. I've been trying really hard to take makeup that I haven't used in a long time and use it again, because I don't know. I don't like to be a wasteful person, and so when makeup just sits there being unused, I don't know. If I can bear to part with makeup, I will give it away, because I don't like it to just sit there being unused, but there are so many things that I don't want to give away because I still want to use them. And anyway, okay, so you guys have seen this palette a ton. This is a Z palette full of just Makeup Geek shadows. These are all Makeup Geek. If you haven't tried Makeup Geek, go buy their eyeshadows. They are amazing. All of their single eyeshadows are amazing. It's not like hit and miss like Coastal Scents or Morphe. All of their shadows are amazing. And the reason why is because they don't use fillers and they don't use talc in their eyeshadows. So they're super creamy, and they're, what are they called? The foiled eyeshadows, like this one here and this one here. Oh, they're so beautiful. They are like pressed pigments. You don't need any water or Fix Plus to intensify the colors. They're just creamy and blendable and reliable. You know that they're not gonna look funky no matter what you're doing. So, love my Makeup Geek shadows. I use in my tutorials primarily Makeup Geek and Anastasia Beverly Hills. Those are like the brands that I use the most, and it's because I love them the most. They are both technically high-end. Anastasia is high-end makeup, but Makeup Geek is high-end quality at a reasonable price. Their single eyeshadows are $5.99 a piece. So when you take that and you compare it to like a $5 drugstore eyeshadow, and the quality isn't that good and it has tons of fillers in it, compare it to this, for 99 cents more, you're getting a much better product. So I don't know. It's not drugstore because it's online only for the time being, but it's amazing quality. So the last palette I'm showing you is this guy right here. This is another Z palette, and I actually just recently got this one. The reason why is because all of these little guys right here had no home to go to. They were just floating around and I wanted somewhere to put them. So I have 2 MAC shadows right here. These are MAC Pro eyeshadows right here. These 4 are new Makeup Geek matte shadows. And this one, and this one are all Makeup Forever Artist eyeshadows. So this is definitely a high-end palette. I love all of these colors. These are colors that I reach for constantly. So yeah, you know, I just need to fill this up. I need more eyeshadows to fill this baby up. That's it for my palette collection, you guys. I hope you enjoyed this video and found something that maybe you need to run out and buy. And if you have any questions about any of the eyeshadows that I showed you, please feel free to leave them in the comments below, and I would be happy to answer that for you. If you are not subscribed yet, of course, you need to go subscribe right now, because I am awesome and my channel is awesome, and I would love to have you as a subscriber. So there are a ton of different people that you could go subscribe to, but subscribe to me because just because. I don't know. If you like me, subscribe to me, please. If you like this video, please like the video, and I will see you in the next one.